Ariel.
Ariel. Ariel.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Welcome. This morning's session is one in a series of learning sessions developed and designed by Ingenuity's learning and development provider program residents. The program is called Constellation because the residents have come together over the last several months to ideate, knowledge share, and workshop their respective learning sessions so that they can elevate key areas of their expertise, research, and experience as arts partners and arts educators, and share it back with you all, in essence, creating a partner-to-partner learning network. So thank you to all of the residents for this incredible collaboration and thoughtful work, which will continue to be presented throughout the spring and a little tiny bit into the summer. Today's session, which is developed by Asia Calcagno, represents a wonderful journey through her own writing experience and how that has informed her work with students. You'll be invited to participate in some writing, and we hope you enjoy. So I'm Ariel Frost. I am the Manager of Partnerships and Learning, and I have here with me Asia Calcagno, who is the Director of Programs at Young Chicago Authors. And also providing me a little bit of tech support is my colleague and wonderful person, Courtney Cintron, who is the Director of Partnerships and Learning. This virtual meeting is taking place on the stolen land of the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Odawa nations. Because of the Great Lakes, the land naturally became a site of travel, healing, trade, and gathering for many native tribes, and it's still home to over 100,000 tribal members in the state of Illinois that still practice their traditions and care for the land. As we begin today's program, let's honor the ancestral grounds we're on and support the resilience and strength that all Indigenous people have shown worldwide, and begin to rethink our own relationship with the land and its original peoples. Okay, a few housekeeping. Feel free to rename yourself and include your pronouns and your organization. Also, to enable closed captioning for yourself, please find the CC symbol located at the bottom of your screen. It should provide you with a couple of options to either view and download a transcription or use live captions. You'll also receive the slides and a recording of this presentation via email in 1 to 2 weeks following this meeting. And finally, following the event, we'll provide you with an exit survey. Your feedback is always valued, and it's essential in helping us make continued improvements to these events. It's also a way to stay in dialogue around what's important to you. And then lastly, before we really get started, I'm going to briefly outline some session norms for these sessions. And I think someone might be not muted. So we divided the session norms into a few different categories. Under equity of voice and learning, we have take space, make space. So as a participant, be mindful of any privileged identities you may hold and help to create an environment for everyone to contribute. Also, speak from personal experience. So let's own our own statements and views about things and not presume to be able to speak for others. And under how we show up for ourselves and each other, we have openness to learning. So that's an understanding that we're all learners in the space. Flexibility and patience. Things may not always go 100% according to plan. Sometimes technology is at play. We want to make sure that we don't get the gremlins. So we're just thanking you for your grace and flexibility. And then use the chat box mindfully. So when you use the chat, we ask that you try to make your questions and comments as relevant to what we're talking about as possible. And finally, confidentiality. So take away lessons, but not personal content. We'll sometimes knowledge share and co-share ideas and resources in these sessions, but if anyone shares anything personal, we ask that you don't bring it out of the space. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it off to Asia Calcagno to guide us through today's session.
Thank you. Appreciate that. How's everyone doing? I hope really good. Feel free to drop how you're doing in the chat. As that welcome stated, my name is Asia Calcagno, and I'm really excited to be here to talk about something that is extremely passionate to me, which is writing, but more so specifically how to decenter skills and center community and communities of writers and writing spaces. So I'm really excited to be just in this space to be able to also walk us through thinking about writing in our own experiences and also in our own personal lives and as educators and practitioners. As a writer for over 16 years and an educator for over 10 now, I know writing to be really hard, but I know teaching writing to be even harder. So I'm excited to think about how do we begin to build a culture of writing and learning spaces that include everyone, and that makes writing accessible, intentional, and interesting for your students. And most importantly, in my opinion, beneficial and joyful for your learners. But why does writing matter anyway? And so I'm here to talk about some recommendations, share some writing cultures that I love, that I've witnessed and participated in, that I believe do decentering skills and centering community really well. And we'll also walk away with a chance to be able to start with ourselves, because I wholeheartedly believe that we can't do this work without starting with ourselves first. So we will have some writing time. I also have a really noisy cat, so she's going to be just walking around and meowing. So just don't mind her. So you probably hear her now. And so a few things of what to expect today, understanding that writing can be used as a tool to engage in storytelling, cross-cultural communication and dialogue, and community building. What else to expect? Walking away knowing how to build more effective and actively inclusive writing cultures in your educational spaces. That piece. I want to start by centering as well. When I say educational spaces, I speak of both traditional and untraditional writing spaces. I know that we're all practitioners across the spectrum of during school time, out of school time, and across ages and identities. And so just know that I'm wrapping in experiences that speak across the spectrum. I want us to walk away inspired to adapt inclusive practices in your writing spaces that encourage young people's participation and well-being. Young people's participation and well-being. I know that young people don't participate at the same amount in accord that their peers might, and that's for different reasons and needs. And so we're going to speak about that, especially by acknowledging writing is scary. We know that it's scary for many different reasons and experiences. Lastly, you're going to walk away with some tools. I believe that learning spaces should be able to produce and share resources that can be implemented starting tomorrow, right? And so we will be writing today and we will be sharing. And so my hope is that you're walking away with those tangible tools that I walk you through in our writing space to be able to, use in your classrooms and learning spaces as soon as possible. So yeah, let's just dive in. So this is a fun, cute little comic strip, Charlie Brown. We know him, we love him. And so I know it's a little bit not easy to read, so I'm just going to read this little comic strip. The first says English essay, what I did this summer. And it looks like Charlie is going to write, I played ball and I went to camp. You see that he's counting in the bottom left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So he's counting his words and is a little bit frustrated in that last comics strip with 992 words to go. The reason I put this here is just thinking about what is our writing education, what our experience has been, and how it may have impacted us. This, I think, wraps up a lot of the stress that young people and learners, and even ourselves and our own personal experiences in writing education and cultures that we've grown up in or witness or even sometimes have to implement. The stress of what we've been learned to think about as skillful. And so I just want us to ground ourselves in that right now, and think about our own writing education and pathways. What were the successful and not so successful moments that we've witnessed and experienced? I think about that deeply as an educator. What I was asked to read and write, how I was taught, who taught me, and how was I graded, and was it effective or ethical or inclusive? Even thinking about who our educators looked like, right? How they spoke to us, and maybe what we noticed was valued, undervalued even at times, and what we wish we had more of. And so I just want us to kind of think about that before we even move into these next pieces. I think it'd be remiss to think about what type of educators we are to this day if we don't reflect on what we've seen and what we valued and what we maybe had to unlearn. And so I know for me, I'm going to center a lot of storytelling as a way to share some of those impacts. And, even thinking about some of the spaces, even in this comic strip right here, what are we being taught as valued? Writing more, and so thinking about some of those pieces that we're bringing into our classrooms these days. What do we need to think about in terms of the values and the unlearning of particular values before we, continue to cast and marginalize a lot of our young people out. And so just wanted to keep that right here, is thinking about what are some of the impactful spaces that we can also make up for lost time. And so one of the pieces that I want to start with, and we can go to the next slide, is just thinking about takeaways from schooling. And so, as mentioned, right, and thinking about some of the grounding, what are some of the things that I've inherited in terms of experience? What do I have to unlearn? So storytelling, as I mentioned, is a strong way for me to just think about trajectory, and I want to encourage you all to do the same. Admittedly, I learned a lot of extremely conflicting values from my schooling, and I'm here to share a little bit about some of that impact. I think a lot about first to eighth grade. I attended a Chicago public school, the same school actually, from first to eighth grade. Shout out anyone who went to Walt Disney Magnet School, the original campus. And so I think a lot about, in reflection, I wrote a lot about the books that I read. I wrote a lot about the facts, the regurgitating of facts. A lot of writing was just about what came to memory, right? And one of the values that I wrote here is what I learned from first to eighth grade. It is most important to write about what you read, and grammar is the most important skill in writing. For me, to this day, I wholeheartedly disagree with that value. But of course, a lot of the schooling and what I was taught and a lot of the subjects helped instill that value in me. Upon going to high school, so from 9th to 12th grade, one of the biggest values that I took away was it's most important to write about what you know, and writing is meant to be shared out loud. How I got there, so high school was a space where a lot of what I noticed and learned was of course, like writing about my own identity, but that of course had a larger expansion of subject matter and educators. But a lot of what I learned too was in out of school time and community-based organizations that I attended out, when I was not in school. And there was a creative writing club, there was community-based organizations that helped fill a lot of those gaps. Admittedly, during school time, I remember feeling extremely isolated in my classrooms, never having the opportunity to be able to share the writing that I was doing. Yes, I was writing creatively. I was also writing academically. I had more of an expansion of learning about different types of writing. The grading that I did was not transparent. Or grading that was done, I was receiving grades that I did not know how I got there. So I was not necessarily embedded in a community that shared impact or had those relationships with my educators to be able to learn, how we got here. I was in out of school time in community-based organizations with additional mentors, reading and writing for a lot of pleasure. That was the first time that I experienced that. And similarly, I know that this is not just an isolated experience, but I'm sharing this in that, of course, these are completely various different values that I learned. In entering college, I was very much behind from a lot of my peers, which again is not necessarily an isolated experience. This is something that is many different individuals' narrative. But one of the, knowing and learning and seeing that I was completely behind in terms of my academic writing, while also knowing that I was an extremely talented and higher level creative writer. One of the big questions I had at that time in entering college and navigating college is, how can I be really good at one type of writing and not the other? And so I'm sharing this as a way to kind of humanize that experience, and that this is what a lot of our young people are experiencing as well. We have really phenomenal young people who are talented in maybe one particular vein of writing. Maybe they're a really great journaler and they can write about the personal. Some of our young people might have extremely, high level arguments. We might have young people who are extremely great in just one thing and might be struggling in another. And so this is just a helpful way to be able to humanize and level that playing field of when we think about writing, we're thinking about completely different things. And so upon entering another thing about my trajectory, I think we have someone who muted. Oh, thank you. So taking all of this, right, as I grounded us in thinking about what are the values that we're learning, but also what do we have to unlearn? As an educator, and I taught 9th grade English language arts. I was in the classroom for a few years. And of course, many of these values I had to kind of take and parse and break away and find at the seams what is going to work best for my young people. As an educator, I had to unlearn for the sake of my students. And a few things that I'm going to share. I had to consider everything does not necessarily need to be graded. And most of the valuable things that our young people can learn cannot be taught. They're necessarily cultivated. And I had to be mindful, right, of intentional ways to diversify what I graded or assessed. And additionally, a second thing that I had to unlearn is thinking a lot about the writing process should not and does not have to be done in isolation. And community is one of the most powerful resources. So those two things, and I want us to think about how do we rethink assessment, what we assess, what's important to assess. Secondly, how do we instill active and effective communities of writers in our classrooms? Because think about it, so much of our educational experience has been done at a desk, writing at a desk or a computer, and not necessarily sharing. So I'm going to share and talk a little bit more about that as well. So in valuing, I think about these detrimental trends and values that I've picked up and that we all pick up. Consider what it might be for you, if it's similar or different. And the value of assessment, though I know that we cannot as educators get around assessment, we're beholden to having to grade and assess. But I do believe that all writing does not necessarily require a grade, or we can be mindful and fair in leveling where and how we assess. There are beautiful things that are captured in assessment. Think about the writing process, the thought process, the creative process, the building of identity and voice, the opportunity to share, the empathy building. Some particular pieces of writing are valued over others, argumentative writing and research, for example. But think about, how and why poems aren't, held to the same value, or songs or character profiles and personal essays. We have funny students. We know where is the space for them to write jokes in class, or just thinking about those journal entries. Why are these things not count as heavily as the other? And how does that make our young people feel in terms of their confidence? And so there are so many different ways to measure. On the isolation and writing without and not in community piece, As mentioned, most of the writing I've done in school settings were done in isolation, not necessarily community organizations and out of school time, which has different essences, but we can model them into our school and traditional time of writing. I do wish that I had more examples. I wish I had more of my peers to be able to count on as a resource, and mentioning those extreme gaps in my own experience and understanding around language and writing, especially as I entered a college community. Most of those gaps were filled on my own or with community and out of school time. And I could not necessarily count on, my regular school time to be able to support in those gaps. And so just sharing that, and that, again, that is not a feeling in isolation. This is a feeling that is across the spectrum, and just something to support and humanizing how and why we teach, and what are the values that we're implementing that we can unlearn. We can go to the next piece. So writing culture and what we know. This is just a few different pieces as well to help build more context as to the, this is what we're feeling, and this is how, trends that are coming up, and how did we get here? This is research pulled from various different sources. Teachers across America, we know that there is such little writing training. But in thinking about that more so, there's such a confidence that comes across the research and how reading is taught and how literacy is taught, but not necessarily about how writing is taught. And where the teaching of reading is something done with a higher level of confidence. Writing is just different in terms of how individuals are trained to teach writing, given the extremely different skill sets and styles and mechanisms and modalities. And there's additionally such high levels of disparities that exist at large volumes. The National Assessment of National Assessment of Educational Progress, states that there's about 75% of 12th graders that are not at grade level proficiency in terms of their writing. Now, of course, we know that there's remediation that is done at every single grade. This is just very alarming, but when we're adding the disparity of Black and Latinx students who are not likely to receive the ample amount of proper writing education that they need, that is something to consider, and that we know that there's truly no perfect way to teach writing, or at least that is a belief that I hold. And how do we kind of get there? But how can we at least fill the gaps and make it more of a joyful and thoughtful and mindful experience? Additionally, when we think about writing assessments don't necessarily, there's not one perfect one. And if there are good ones that exist, we need to know that there are gaps in effectiveness and how it comes to the appropriate way to be able to assess writing. We know that students come with completely different levels of experience, learning differences, needs for accommodations. And when we think about, and also in your own reflection of your experience, and even how you might be teaching writing, or if you're a reading teacher or literacy teacher, there's a lot of focus on how much time we're reading, but not necessarily how much time we're writing. And if we are, how do we, fill the gaps and bridge writing and reading at the same time? We'd be remiss to be, not mentioning when our young people say, and even how we feel about writing is inherently scary. And I know every single one of us here today has a student who has probably mentioned at some point, or you've heard them mention at some point, even to a peer, I hate writing, I don't know what to write, I'm not good at it. One of the things that I've come across a lot when I used to teach traditionally is young people coming up to my desk or coming up to me and saying, I wrote something, can you let me know if it's good? Can you let me know if it's right? And those questions even hold so much weight around how young people condition writing as a process to perfection. And as mentioned, before, I inherently believe there's no perfect way to teach writing, but there are ways in my beliefs to encourage writers or growing writers to learn the language of the process, and that holds much more weight and value. and that there are benefits of an imperfect writing pathway, and that the most valuable benefit to writing is to articulate who and why and where we are. So my pedagogy to state too is that all students should be and should comprehend who is a part of their community of writers, and we should abolish the fear of failing at writing, and writing cannot be taught, but rather cultivated. So I say that to be able to talk about some of the cultures of writing that I love and that I've witnessed or been a part of, because who am I to share what I believe without showing how that shows up in the world? So in the next slides, we're gonna see and witness some really beautiful writing cultures, and some friends from 826 Shy are here, so I see them. They're one of the third. So let's start with a few with this one right here. So I attended in high school, Oak Park River Forest High School. Shout out them if anyone here is from OPRF. And the class, so it's titled Feelings Class, or at least what we called it then. So a really wonderful educator named Avi Lessing. He is the teacher of feelings class. And I think that I'll allow this to really speak a little bit more without me having to share, but I just think that feelings class is one of the most impactful spaces that I witnessed as a junior in high school, where writing married social emotional learning. And I just want you all to listen to how those students were impacted. So I'll leave it to Tech.
It's the first day of school at Oak Park River Forest High School. WBEZ's Becky Vivi reports now on an increasingly popular elective class.
25 seniors trickle into the second floor library. Teacher Avi Lessing jokes with them about how they're all feeling on the first day of their last year of compulsory education. He waits a few minutes and then gets down to business.
How many of you know this class is Experiments in Reading Literature and the World? And how many of you know this class is Feelings class? And how many of you kind of know it as both? Great. All right, well, either way, you're in the right place.
Lessing started teaching this class in 2005 after pitching it to a bunch of juniors. It was pretty popular then, but now it's even more so. This year, there are 9 sections and 2 other teachers teaching it.
The main idea of the class, if I could sum it up, is that you know how on the first day of school you could do the getting to know each other day, and then the rest of school just becomes like school? In this class, every day is the getting to know you, and getting to know yourself and getting to know your classmates.
Lessing says as school becomes more and more about academic achievement and test scores, students are missing important skills, often referred to in education circles as social emotional skills, like how to listen, how to communicate, how to relate to people with different experiences than your own. The kids in here are racially diverse and come from all different parts of the school: athletes, brains, music nerds, a bit like the Breakfast Club. Lessing starts by getting the students standing in a big circle. For the rest of the hour, they play a series of name games. First, find the people you already know.
So kind of avoid sarcasm. Really greet people. All right, go.
How are you? I'm good. How are you?
Then stop, find a partner, stand back to back, and change 3 things about your appearance. Turn around and try to notice what your partner changed.
Ready? Turn around. Go.
Hair, shoe, ID.
Got it. Okay, you buttoned your flannel.
Yup.
I can't see your headphones and your ID is backwards.
Oh, I should just put it on.
Oh.
Then it's find the people you don't know. Introduce yourself.
Go! Go to people you don't know.
I do not know you.
I do not know you.
What's your name?
Elaine.
I'm Jack. Nice to meet you.
After that, tell 2 truths and a lie. And finally, recap by walking around, touching someone's shoe, and repeating their name. At the end of the class, Lessing asks each student to go around and say why they signed up for this class in the first place.
I took this class because my homies told me it was cool.
I heard that Mr. Lessing is a lot like Mr. Cohen, and Mr. Cohen is my all-time favorite teacher, and so.
My sister told me to. She said she really liked it, so I thought I'd do it.
Yeah, I heard this class was cool and that it didn't have any homework in it.
And I wanted a non-traditional classroom setting.
My counselor put me here. So.
I took this class because I want to learn something that I could actually apply to my life.
With a course full of seniors, Lessing warns the students it's not just an easy A or a blow-off class.
And I think it's easy in the sense like you get to know a lot of people, but I think it's hard in the sense like you have to show up and kind of face each other and be here. And I value your presence more than anything else.
And he hopes students will eventually see feelings class as less of a class and more a part of who they're becoming. Becky Vivi, WBEZ.
St. Joseph, Michigan is a small town on Lake Michigan.
Thank you so much. I saw a few folks in the chat like, I wish I had that class. The reason why I think this is an incredible and memorable experience as a young person, but also someone who went into the classroom to become an educator, is noticing now what I did not notice then, is that the entire experience of that extremely untraditional, social emotional focus sort of class all of that was research. All of that was truly the human experience and connectivity and building of a community of writers in a way that we don't really notice. And I don't remember too many pieces of classroom tasks or homework tasks, but I do remember one writing. We did a lot of writing. One of the writing assignments that we had was to write our story, and thinking about how every individual in that classroom was tasked with writing their own story. But again, like having to use that classroom as more of an experience of our research to get there, I think is just such a brilliant way that we're not necessarily taught. And so as an offering of one of the cultures of writing that I think is just so impactful and beautiful. So the next piece, share your candy. There's nothing to share here in terms of like a media or video, but sharing your candy, and this is why there's this little piece here, this candy piece, was one of the most impactful pieces of building my praxis as an educator and supporting my own growth and who I want to become as an educator. I remember I student taught and I went to college in Connecticut, and I student taught there. And I'm sure anyone who's observed a classroom or student taught, shows up to their student teaching assignment and has their little notebook and is writing and trying to find all of the things that you are taught in a textbook. But that is not what I experienced in my student teaching. In this classroom, I wish I remembered the teacher's name, and I do not, sadly, but he lives on and just who I am as an educator. I remember showing up and I saw on the wall, it said, share your candy is one of the classroom rules. And it was actually the only rule, I think, to this day. And what I noticed was everything that I was not taught by my professors. This teacher encouraged every day to share, encouraged all of his students to share everything, every single thing that he ever asked the students to do, there was sharing involved. And it was just truly ingrained in that English classroom culture. It was actually one of the first times I noticed how sharing can be deeply centered and resourceful, and how students can be reliant on sharing with their peers in a healthy way. And it was how a community of writers was built, and it was motivated by students. And even thinking about some of the imperfect, the silly, the courageous, the personal, the students did it. And it was simply just by a phrasing of share your candy. I think about that And it's funny, when I actually started teaching traditionally, it was actually something that I put on my wall as well. And I used the phrase share your candy. And so whenever students wrote a first draft or a paragraph, or it was something that I wanted to embed in my culture as well. Because again, when students say writing is scary and students are sharing their feedback of, I don't think I can do this, I don't know what to do. Writing can feel isolating and scary, especially when we have writers across the spectrum of skill set and level and need. And I think how thinking about the ways that we've taught and experienced writing in isolation does not support building a community of writers. In my opinion, it does not. And so that was the first time that I really witnessed how sharing can be a really beautiful and courageous thing, and support students, and also build the capacity of you as an educator as well. And so that piece around sharing your candy is something that really feeds my own practice. Third, Secret Agent Supply Co. So shout out to my friends at 826 Chicago. So 826 Chicago, if you're not aware, is a writing organization that inspires students and educators to write. I formerly worked there as a director of programs, and I just love them to this day. And I think a lot about how beautiful and how I wished when I was an educator that I utilized and partnered with 826 Chicago. So 826 Chicago also has a bookstore, if you've never been, which is called the Secret Agent Supply Company. And so one of the most beautiful things about 826 Chicago is how every program is student-centered. It focuses on storytelling, and students are involved in every aspect of the writing process. Every program results in a publication. And when we think about publication, it's not necessarily just a physical print. It is everything from zines to videos to sound clouds to songs. They rethink what publication looks like and feels like. And think about too how much your students actually share their writing and what sharing actually looks like. Sharing does not necessarily have to mean turning to your peer. Sharing does not necessarily have to mean reading out loud in front of the classroom or performing. Sharing can also look via publication. Insert title here is actually one of a beautiful example, in that this is a multilingual publication. So I think there are 3 or 4 different languages: English, Spanish, Mandarin, and Bangla. And students essentially were asked to write in their native languages, and it's translated also into home languages, in which the languages that young people's parents and families spoke at home, and was just a beautiful way to be able to share, what work is being done when there can be cultural or language barriers. And so just rethinking a lot of what publication can look like and what access to publication and writing can look like. Additional things that I think are really beautiful about the culture of writing at 826 is that, again, as mentioned, students get to choose every single thing in their writing process. So they get to decide the title, the forward writer, and they have visits from actual, living writers in the city and published writers, and get access to that. Some publications can be utilized as a really wonderful teaching tool. And so I remember one of the publications was a teacher in conversation with a teaching artist, and just thinking about what a writing community and writing looks like and how to establish a writing culture in the classroom. Just really beautiful things. And so I just want to really elevate that. Just thinking that was the first time in my career that I've ever thought about, wow, I never really thought about how sharing writing can be so impactful and what that really does in terms of heightening young people's confidence, but then you don't really know until you see some of the examples. And this here is a really beautiful video of a former student who got to have her poem and piece of writing turned into an animation. And so we're gonna listen and see what this publication looks like.
Chicago by Izzy. I still think she's beautiful. At times, she isn't the cleanest, under certain circumstances. Some people find love here. I guess you can call it romance. Some people come back to her. Some people don't get second chances. I still think she's beautiful. Being judged by the media, kids don't play in her park anymore. Roses don't grow in her yard anymore. I still think she's beautiful. I see what they don't. I accept what they won't. The bad, the good, the fancy, the hood, the rich, the poor, gaining justice, and more. I can hear as she desperately cries out for help. Even when she's covered in yellow tape, I still think she's beautiful. I still think she's tasty. People might say she's ugly, but in my mind, I think she's beautiful. Chicago, Illinois.
Thank you for sharing that. Tech is really on it. So, that was, yes, I see all of it. That is so awesome. That is so cool. Really is. I really love just thinking about how young people get to shine and how we can support them in sharing what they write. And even, I think the power of young people not knowing or believing that they're doing something really impactful, but being able to see it transform, I think is really cool. So can we have this? I don't know if we're going to get the slides back or we're going to jump into the next. So the next piece, one of the last writing cultures that I want to elevate and share is the spoken word club at Oak Park River Forest High School. As mentioned, that is the high school that I attended, and this was a really impactful writing space that I got to be a part of after school. And so shout out to all of that out of school time and community-based orgs and folks who lead after school clubs. If there are anybody here, shout out to the power in that. And so I really want to elevate that, attending that school and being a part of that after school club, and also returning back. I was a teaching assistant there for 5 years for the club. One of the most deeply empathetic and effective writing spaces that I've ever seen. So this club centered writing and poetics as a tool for cross-cultural dialogue, and students committed to who committed to the club got to commit to up to 3 showcases a year. And we're going to see a clip here, but it spanned about 50 to 60 students a showcase, which I think says the power of students wanting to get involved. And they took their writing so seriously. They had full autonomy over what they got to write and how and what they got to perform. Some of the other things that I think were really beautiful is just how we can leverage writing and group dynamics to storytell, and finding lifelong friends in a community of writers in an after school space. There's something that just stands out to me about that. And additionally, there's so much that utilized group work as a vital place to start. And so students were tasked to bond with one another. We're not just diving in and writing, we're actually getting to know one another and bonding. There was also additional therapists, staffed in spaces. Just, of course, we know so much comes up with writing, and that's another piece, right? When young people are writing about things that they might need additional support and therapy and counseling. And it was one of the first spaces that I've witnessed that as well. And that just knowing that, we can write about things that can be therapeutic, but also this isn't the only therapy space. We can also have additional trusted, caring adults here. When students wrote, of course, the end goal is to showcase, right, as in terms of a performance. And some of the most beautiful things that I've seen is how communities in the school showed up to support students with giving writing feedback and also performance feedback, and honoring just the time in the club, right? And at the showcases, we're going to see just how phenomenal, not just the teaching of writing is here, but how students showed up for one another. And so this is just a little bit of an insight of how do we write and what we can do with some of our writing.
simmer down, simmer.
Check.
10 p.m. on a school night, I watch my computer screen, my psyche sops up a puddle, the protester's pent-up rage, yet his face pixelates indifference. Words that defy the system we live by, torn at his expense, his flimsy poster rips from pressure. I scrutinize his leakage for moments on end.
Listening to his silence cry.
He's speaking against a man who finds comfort in condemning heritage, a man who might lead this country we call our home.
Why doesn't he retaliate?
Confusion racks my brain. I wanted to uncover the secret to his outermost calm. His words are silenced. My ears find his voice deafening.
That day I was hurt enough to let you listen to the mental conversations through the vents. But instead you shut them all and told me your anime was more relevant. You only opened them to add to the commotion. That's when I realized I was more of a vent to you than a friend.
Somewhere to dump the dust particles that floated off of you and into my self-esteem.
Every whisper smelled of rotten hatred and unknown residue. So my pipes burned, then freeze, and the only thing I could do was exhale cold emotions to make you leave. Narcissist was
what you were to me.
But I don't blame you for being the way that you are, nor do I despise you for it. Because I'd rather be more like you than an air vent.
Angry tears streamed down my face past smiling lips. I heard my mother speaking about their separation, but I hope my eyes conveyed emotions I didn't understand. D's and F's filled progress reports like helium in a balloon. Fake laughs drizzled over my father and I and created puddles of make-believe happiness at his feet. Spite burned through my family's daily interactions like sitting a scalding iron on my confused face. I heard your scolding, but I hope my troubled teen performance could regain your attention. My mother always says, actions speak louder than words. But the words I acted weren't louder than the words I should have said. When my dad moved out in December, it felt like I've been given socks for Christmas. Every time I see my parents' ringless fingers, I feel as if the wedding bands are wrapped around my throat.
Boiled blood bubbles Grandpa's pigmentation. Says he can't stay in the sun too long or bullets will burn smoldered skin. I don't think Grandpa trusts Daylight Protection Squad. He's seen shaded skin split too many times, felt black bones break too many lines. Grandpa's lost lineage still lingers. He stays at home now, doesn't leave the comfort of couch cushions. The only razor rays his skin seal in flood from solitude. Grandpa sunshades cocoa complexion, handcuffs himself to dusk, spends twilight tracing the darkness of silhouette shadows, staining ink in concrete night.
We protest
Our way out of vicious cycles because we refuse to be just another silence cry,
whisper in the air vent,
ringless finger,
broken bone.
I think we can all agree that that is just phenomenal writing, phenomenal storytelling, and phenomenal group dynamics, and just even thinking about how long it took them to get there. And so I share all of these, right, as intentional cultures that I've witnessed, that so we can all just see what is possible in whatever format that we get to teach young people about writing. I'm going to share a few writing recommendations, and then we're going to jump into some writing time. So in a nutshell, some of the biggest pieces that I want us to just take away from today is just how we can build in daily joyful writing habits. Writing does not have to feel like a task. And I know that so many of our young people feel that writing is, and we've witnessed and seen just the emotions that might come up when young people get to write. And so how can we build in joyful writing habits, whether it's just starting the day with a prompt when students get to come in, writing about our day. One of my favorite check-in questions, which involves getting creative, is compare your day to a piece of clothing. And that's something that I offer you all to take. My students get sometimes really excited. It's a way that gets them thinking, their creative juices flowing, thinking about, reflecting on the self in the day, right? And it's just a fun, joyful way to be able to build in a writing habit without even thinking about it. I invite you all to share your candy. Yes, you. I just think about how often are you modeling for students? Do you write with and alongside your students? Do you share things that you might have journaled, or poems that you've written, or intro paragraphs or arguments and essays? How often do you get to model and share your candy to help your young people get comfortable with sharing? Because a lot of the scariness is that it is done in isolation, and we don't get to see what are some of the examples. How do I get there? Also, it doesn't have to be perfect, and leaning into the imperfect as well. Centering student interests. This is something that I think is really important. And sometimes we think that we do it, and sometimes we might not be doing it in the ways that our young people might need us to. A lot of the times we devalue what students are already doing in terms of writing. I think that a lot of what we see in school is not really reflected in what is, or even out of school time, is not really reflected in what is happening in young people's real lives. They're writing Instagram captions and Facebook statuses, comics. They're, writing the grocery list, the song, the diary entry, and how can we center those as valid forms of writing, because they are, and how do we support getting writing to feel less scary by centering interest in what young people are already doing in their real lives. As mentioned, right, moments of failure, fear-based tactics are used too commonly in education. We've all witnessed this in schools and spaces, especially when it comes to assessment and grading. Failure is a very real thing that does not necessarily trend towards getting young people feeling comfortable and confident in writing. And it's disappointing. And so how do we rethink what is being assessed? How do we, help young people feel like they can win at writing? But also knowing too that the journey is what is most important, and helping them get there and focusing on writing as a trajectory. Lastly, that piece around isolation, how do we build a community of writers, right? And so where students have a common goal with one another, and they can count on their peers to cheer them on and be a resource. Community of writers, I've noticed, is a really beautiful space to build language and understanding together. I was taught a really long time ago that the word workshop means that we need to fix a thing. And so a community of writers essentially is a community of workshoppers. And this is a workshop. Do we call the classroom a classroom, or the writing space a writing space? Can we say that this is a workshop? Today, we're going to workshop together. We're all fixing a thing that is broken. And so reframing and helping young people understand that writing does not necessarily have to be a perfect thing. We're getting at this and reworking, rebuilding together. I offer that as a support. And I didn't necessarily feel that I had a real community of writers until, too late. I've been already writing my entire life, right? And so finding one a junior year or senior year of high school, right, can be a really long way to go. And so if you are a second or third grade teacher or fifth grade teacher, or even a ninth or 10th grade teacher, and you're teaching writing, or you're teaching writers across the grades and identities, how can we support and leverage and building and a community of writers so young people don't feel as isolated. And so, I offer that as a way to reframe We are halfway through, and so we're going to get into some writing. But before we do that, we're going to do a little break. I've been talking, and now you all are going to be doing. And so what I would love in this little short break of ours, a few different things. I want you all to get something to write with, and actually a few different things, and I'll put it in the chat. Something to write with, a piece of paper, a physical piece of paper here that we can write on. Preferably something with lines. If you don't have that, that's okay. And if you have access to it, 2 books, any books, doesn't matter what type of book it is, even if it's a magazine or is it something that has words on it. And I'll put it in the chat, what I'm asking you all to grab. I'm also going to ask you all to write a fun little check-in answer. So we're grabbing something to write with, a piece of paper, and 2 books, or something with words on it if you have it. So we're going to grab that. We can take about 5 minutes to collect ourselves. Within the next 5 minutes, I want you to drop in a chat, what is your favorite snack to eat when you're writing? So what's your favorite snack to eat when you're writing? So take about 5 minutes and we'll be back. All right, hope everyone has some those materials. You got another minute and a half and we'll be on the road to writing. All right. So as folks are gathering, I love these snacks. I wholeheartedly believe that coffee is a snack at this point of my coffee journey. So excited to jump in. So anything with writing. I love that someone said my car manual is about to become art. Yes, that counts. Doesn't matter as long as it has words. Really excited to dive in. So let's jump right in. Thank you all for participating in that little what are the snacks that we eat while writing, because we need to fuel ourselves. So think about that. So what I really want us to do is dive into 30 minutes of writing. And so a little bit about our writing time is one, framing in we cannot teach writing if we are not practicing it ourselves. I admittedly, for years when I was teaching, never, wrote something new in my own personal life. Yes, I wrote with my students, but necessarily in my own time out of teaching, I definitely did not hone in on that as a skill set to help fuel me being a better educator for young people. And I just want to frame that teachers should position themselves as writers as well, and practice that, find your own communities. I also want us to leave this time knowing that these are really easy, low lift writing habits and skills to be able to implement tomorrow. And so just thinking about what are some of those quick on the whim, I don't need to require anything, no resources. This is just quick things that I keep in the back of my head and in my toolbox in the case that I ever need to show or, facilitate a writing activity, because sometimes we just need a little bit of a lift in the energy and the morale of our writing spaces sometimes. And so this is one, to practice on your own time, and also implement tomorrow, keep it in your own toolbox. So I'm going to walk you through 3 fun different writing habits. Each of these habits are really helpful for a particular different thing. We're going to jump into the first one called row writing, which is a really fun way to encourage community. This is where your piece of paper is going to really come in handy. Okay, so I want you to, we're going to have 3 different prompts in row writing. You've probably seen a different rendition of this, and that's cool. But we're going to have 3 different prompts. We're going to have 3 minutes for each one of the prompts. So have your pen ready. If you are not using a piece of paper, that's okay. If you're typing, that's fine. So the first prompt, and I'm not going to expand on it. First prompt is the world is ending. You're going to have 3 minutes to write, and I'll let you know when the 3 minutes are over. The first prompt is the world is ending. All right, we are at 3 minutes. So I want us to pause and I'm going to give you direction about what you're going to do. So if you can watch. So I was writing alongside with you all. So in row writing, when you go to your next prompt, what you want to ask your students to do is fold the paper so that just the last line is visible. So the idea is to be able to pass so that the next person can only see the last line. And if you're in a row, or, passing to the next, person next to you, whatever way, the intent is to be able to pass so that the next person is able to pick up off of what the other person wrote. We're not necessarily in community with multiple people, I'm assuming, wherever you are, and that's okay. But you'll just pick up from your last line. So, but if you're doing this with a group of writers, this is the direction you would give them. The second prompt is, I just lost my keys. Oh, wonderful. Yes. I love the work. An exquisite corpse. Love it. Prompt 2, I just lost my keys. 3 more minutes. Okay, wrap up where you are at. Find an ending point. And of course, we're going to fold again so that the last line is the only thing that is visible. The third and last prompt for this writing activity. The best day of my life was ... So we're starting with that as the first line. to clarify. Okay, and we are at time. So wrap up where you are at. And so, if you want to unfold and see what you've created, is a full piece of writing. And the beauty of this is that this is a way to be able to collaboratively write with your young people that you teach. What is fun about it, again, is the mystery, is it encourages sharing and community. I usually get to this as an activity with students when they first meet one another, or if there's, a joining of folks across difference, right? It's just a fun way to be able to say, like, look, you're capable of writing. It's a fun and encouraging way to be able to write without doing too much at one time. So, and thank you for sharing. This is also called an exquisite corpse. So thank you for that. We're going to jump into a second different writing habit. This is where we're going to utilize the books that you all have gathered. If you don't have a book, again, that's totally cool. So this doesn't necessarily have a title to it. I'm just titling it Word Bank for now. My cat is, again, meowing in the background. So her name is Dollar. She's very talkative. And so what we're going to do with the books that you all have, I want you to skim them. And so essentially what we're going to be tasked with before we jump into writing is building a word bank. So if you are typing or if you have a journal, now is the time to be able to gather. Essentially what you're going to do is just take a book, skim. We're not reading, we are skimming. What we're doing, the hope is that we're able to find 15 words to build a word bank. Think about words that are interesting, that are powerful, maybe words you don't even know what they mean, or words you haven't even used in a long time. You're just skimming to be able to find and gather words for a word bank. Find 15 words. I'm going to give you all about 2 minutes to find and skim. If you don't have a book, find a random website, Google something really random, and then maybe it's an article or a website. You can skim using a website. So you can also do this if you don't have a book as a resource. So 2 minutes, just skim and write down 15 words to build a word bank. I'll call time. Just words, just words. Good question. All right, take another 10 seconds to finish up your word banks. If you don't have 15, that's fine. Okay. So you can pause on your skimming. I hope that was fun. I definitely got some interesting words off Google. So I want you to just look at your word bank and star 5 words. Doesn't matter what they are. Maybe they're most interesting to you, or they have a fun essence or theme. So star 5 words. And what I want you to do with those 5 words, now that you've starred them, is I want you to just write a story and incorporate those 5 words. What's fun about this activity is that it gets students or writers going and inspired by also utilizing and building their own vocabulary, which is just a fun thing. If that's something that is something you're focusing on in your classrooms, your programs, this is just a fun way to also encourage writing kind of out of nothing, writing by building an inspiration from what's around us. So take those 5 words. We're going to have 7 minutes of writing time, and just incorporate those 5 words in your story. So 7 minutes. We have 1 more minute and we're going to wrap up. Okay, find a stopping point. I hope you all are coming up with some really fun things. I'm excited to hear what they are. Now, we're going to jump into our last writing habit. This one is a fun one. Well, I hope they're all fun, but in my opinion, one of the funnest ones that gets us to be really silly and creative. So with this one, I am going to walk you all kind of through a visioning, if you will. So this is just building a life. So essentially, we are really building a life out of the things that are around us. So all of us are in a room, hopefully with some things in it. And so I want you to just kind of take a scan around the room that you're in. Take notice of what is there, physical, tangible objects. And I want you to find something that really stands out to you. For example, it is going to be, I'm looking at my cactus plant and it has a really interesting plant holder. It's gray, kind of has some grids to it. It looks really heavy, or I know it's heavy. So that's what I'll probably be writing about. With the thing that you're landing on or you're taking notice of, think about what it looks like, what you imagine it feels like. You can even take a moment to just like study it and like touch it if you want. Think about, what is the day in the life of this object? What is it like? What does it dislike? What does it feel? What does it experience? What does it want? What does it want to say? Who are its friends? Who are its family? What does it wish for? Where does it want to go on vacation? How long does it want to go on vacation? What is its history? I want you to take 5 minutes to build a life out of that object. If you feel stuck on that object, there's no right or wrong answers. You can also go to a different object that you feel might be inspiring you a little bit more. But build a life out of this object. You can even write from the voice and personify that object if you want. 5 minutes of writing. 2 more minutes. Okay, start finding a place to end and wrap up where you're at. Once you find a stopping point, just drop in the chat. How did that feel to be able to get some writing time? I'm so happy. Felt like a gift. What an honor. So I really hope that this stood out to you all as realistic, really easy lifts for yourself and for whoever you teach, wherever you teach. I'm glad that you all had the time. Cathartic feels good. Yeah. How often do we get to just get out of our own heads? So now we're going to dive into some sharing time. I know that some of you all know each other, some of you all don't, but in the spirit of being in a community of writers, right? Sharing is a possibility, as a resource, as a way to be able to not position writing as a perfect act. So these are very, very, very rough drafts that we all did together in the same amount of time. Now we're going to dive into some breakout rooms. I think that we're going to be pretty intimate. Now, the hope for these breakout rooms is a few things. One, get to know each other. Just introduce your name, where you're from. Choose something that you wrote today that maybe you're excited about. Maybe it stood out to you for whatever reason. And sometimes we don't even have to share that reason. You can read your whole piece. Choose one. We're not going to have enough time to read all. You can choose an entire piece or a snippet. Totally up to you. You all have the autonomy. At the end of your sharing time in your intimate breakout rooms, please nominate one person to share out in the whole group. This is just a fun way to also get sharing both in small intimate spaces as well as full larger spaces. I know sharing can be scary. If that is too scary in your breakout room, that's okay. You don't have to nominate someone, but the hope is to be able to share out in the full space as well. I think we're going to get our invitations for our breakout rooms very soon. Cool. Have fun. I hope that was really fun to be able to share what you wrote. Now I'm going to hand it off to whatever group feels comfortable sharing first. And anybody want to unmute and be brave?
I'll go first because I have to leave in about 5 minutes. I'm going to share my exquisite corpse / row writing piece. I think the whole thing's short enough to share, so I'm going to share the whole thing. And I am mostly a performing artist, so you've been warned. The world is ending. I mean, it's obvious. Anyone who's paying attention can see the signs. Hell, even people trying as hard as they can not to see the signs can see them. The question is, which apocalypse will win the race to annihilate mankind? Climate change? Global warfare? the sudden self-awareness of artificial intelligence. My money is on the robots. They probably have my keys. They're always doing shit like this. Give me a minute. I just need to flip switch off and on again. Shout, hey, tin boys, where are the keys? A rattling squeak comes from the vent above, dislodging some dust as the aforementioned keys come jangling down into his outstretched hand. The keys to happiness. They were real. They sat there sparkling, seeming to almost vibrate. We actually had the keys. But what do they open?
Yay, thank you, Emily.
I can go next for our group. This is Abby speaking. I'm going to do some nice voice acting if you can hear me. Great. Mine is also in a exquisite corpse poem. The world is ending and it's fine, but like not fine when it is fine. Who is it fine for anyways? I'm not sure. It's another day. The world is ending, but it's fine. How are you? How are you? I just lost my keys. It wouldn't be the first time that this has happened. Probably won't be the last. I'd probably lose my head if it wasn't attached. Where do things go when they get lost? Do they get sad like the toys in Toy Story? Or are they happy to just get away from the daily grind? Or are they happy to just get away from the daily grind? The best thing in my life, the best day of my life is yet to come. It's very romantic notion to take to the woods and run. I wish I could pay my bills in blueberries, but landlords don't take pies in exchange for rent.
Awesome, thank you. Who's next?
I can go next. I'm also reading my exquisite corpse. Row writing. The world is ending and I don't want to live. I've never wanted to die, but at this point, what is the cost of survival? What if I run out of contacts? What if my glasses break? What if I sprain my ankle again? Come with me. I want to sit in this room where there are still flowers. Let's cuddle and remember the day we met. Gossip about people we haven't seen in years. Maybe they're already dead. I love you and I want to die with you while it's still sunny. Get away from me. All he had done was reach for her hand, but she was so frustrated, at the brink of tears because she couldn't just get in the car and drive away. Melly, I'm sorry. You're sorry every 3 weeks for the same thing. I think that proves you're not actually sorry. He hung his head, eyes closed, remembering that summer night with Brooke and Nikki. He hadn't known it was the best day of his life at the time, but looking back, how couldn't he? Shoplifting from the Marianos, drunk and bold enough to steal the tequila, swimming naked off Belmont Harbor, buoyant and free, certain they could never drown.
Thank you, that was really powerful. Anyone next?
So I'm also doing the exquisite corpse. Okay, so the world is ending right now as we know it, and even as we or I, each of us do not. What is the world though? Is it the round ball of clay we eat and sleep and laugh and cry on? Does that world expand beyond the physical space into the hearts and minds of its inhabitants? Or does that fit into the clay ball? I like to think that the world spirals outward forever like the wisps of ribbon, changing color and transparency and shape. And shape, I said. I know what they look like, but not where they went. The room grew quiet and began to realize how sweat-drenched I was. I'd been running around the building all day. Here I was, just standing in the middle of the room, creating a pool of sailing at my feet. A pool of sailing at my feet. Thrilled. I was surrounded by friends and we had just done the impossible, come in second place at the All-State Marching Band Championships.
That was so good. All of these are so good. Is there any last group that has a representative? All right.
So I'm kind of cheating because I wasn't in a group because I was substitute teaching a class and like had to run away from them. So my group is whoever is in this teacher's lounge right now and is like silently judging me from the corners. The world as I know it is ending, but I will not be writing a poem about misery and destruction and personal apocalypse, but instead take this prompt as a way to transcribe my silent rebirth. Dramatic? Obviously, necessarily. I have things to do and places to be, and they are not the same things and places I banged my skull against when I lived in my hole, my dirty, rat-infested crawl space of a brain. Well, I just lost my keys, and so I had to find an alternative entrance to myself. Knocking on my chest to see if anyone was home to open it felt too akin to cardiac arrest in theory, so I took the back way into myself. You can't see behind my head of too much glamorous, tangled, freshly shampooed, confused hair. But there is a tiny door at the base. Did I mute myself?
You're good now.
The best day of my life was when a band of traveling musicians needed a place to stay and braved my scalp forest to make their way to the door. They knocked. I ignored. I was busy brooding or filing taxes or collecting dust. They knocked again. I was still busy painting my nails or writing bad, sad poetry or maybe crying. They knocked a third time because good things always come in three. It's a rule or something. And I happened to be free, so I opened the door and let them in. And they played me a few songs, and I forgot about all those other chores and learned how to dance.
You all are some writers. That's very evident. Thank you all for one, showing up, two, being in community, three, just being yourselves and diving into this courageous act of sharing with strangers, which has so many benefits. I am just like really happy to have been able to lead this, but also allow you all to lead creatively. And so thank you, a lot of gratitude, and I will kick it off to Ingenuity for any last words.
Okay, so we definitely want to make sure that we don't take one more extra minute of your time. Asia has planned this absolutely perfectly. We just want to highlight a couple of events, but before we even do that, thank you so much, Asia. This was absolutely wonderful and life-giving. And we need to make our own zine of all of our stories, because I know there's got to be some more really amazing stuff out there. So email me your poems if you want. And I think we have some people who are experienced at making zines on here. So great. So our upcoming events, we are launching our next asynchronous virtual course on our platform IVL, and it is Afrocentric SEL Guidebook. It's produced by the Black Teaching Artists Lab in collaboration with us here at Ingenuity. And our target date for the launch is February 6th. So just look out in your emails, on your Instagram, all of those things for those. We also have an info session on Arts Partner Impact Reports. So if you don't know what that is, you should definitely come on down. And then our next Constellation Institute, which I'm very, very excited about, is Gender Inclusion for the Arts Educator, which is facilitated by Cleo Goldberg. And for maybe some of you who have some more things going on during the day, Cleo is also a CPS teacher, so their institute will be 4 to 6 on February 23rd. So please block that off there. And I think Courtney's gonna drop a link to our stuff. So you can register for all these things. And then finally, our all partner meeting, which is in person at Malcolm X College, which is a wonderful space that also has free parking, really great. So that will be March 14th from 9 to noon. And the last thing that I have for you all is to please take our exit survey to give us some feedback, give Asia some feedback, but also give Ingenuity some feedback. Shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes. So if you've got time right now, you can click right on it. I like to try to get 75% of our participants to respond to the survey. So that means that we need at least 24 of you to take the survey. So be one of those 24 people and let us know your thoughts, and have a wonderful day, you all. And yes, I will email the survey. Yes, I'll be hounding you until I get my 24.